It may come as a surprise that I haven't actually done a standalone Gaster video so far, despite how much I talk about him on this channel. This funny little guy has made an appearance in almost all of my videos, and for good reason. There's nothing like a slightly ominous, mysterious figure that seems ambiguously connected in a million different ways to any subject you can shake a stick at. There are, of course, a lot of people who really don't like people talking about Gaster. People who dismiss him as just an Easter egg in Undertale and a way to explain away a lot of the bigger picture theories or ideas within Deltarune. Although I do agree that people certainly use him very liberally to explain things that we don't have answers to, like how I made fun of this idea in my Secret Bosses video, I think it's foolish not to examine this missing puzzle piece, considering how much fun it is to do just that. Welcome viewers, I'm Vivet Veritas, and today I want to talk about a less emphasized aspect of Gaster's existence. You see, a lot of his importance within the narrative and themes has been theories that center around his construction of Deltarune as a program, but there's one little bit of information about Gaster that always made me a bit curious as to how it fits together with everything else that Toby is doing. You see, as would be common knowledge to those sufficiently Gaster-pilled, Gaster has a lot of connections with the number 6, specifically 666. Of course, he's hardly the only individual associated with this string of numbers, the most notable of which is Mr. Beast himself, Satan. It is his number after all. Nothing about Gaster really screams evil though, outside of kind of a ominous mad scientist vibe, so what could this possibly mean in the context of Deltarune, and how could it impact our choices and actions going forward, both theorizing and playing? Today, I'm going to tell you about Gaster and the sin of the narrative. It's time to take another plunge into the darkness darker than dark. Join me, won't you? To understand what I'm going to be talking about today, it's important to ensure we're all on the same page when talking about W.D. Gaster. W.D. Gaster was the former royal scientist to Asgore in Undertale before he was shattered across time and space by his creation. He probably looks like this and is fascinated by the concept of darkness. Hooray for facts! Everything else I'm about to say is either conjecture or opinion. It's my belief, based on the various evidence across multiple chapters, games, and video essays, that Gaster will be in Deltarune and will be important. I know this is a bitter pill to swallow for some people, but this is the Gaster brain rot zone. You're welcome to see yourself out. This video's topic is not the one true reading of Gaster. It is simply one possible option that we could, and should, consider about his potential in the themes and narratives of the game. The point of this video is not to solve W.D. Gaster. It's nowhere near long enough for that. There's a lot of information that we just can't know yet, even and especially if he is going to be important, as there would be for any character. I think that's something that people forget sometimes. We don't know much about the angel, let's say, but we still expect that they're important. Likewise, just because we don't know much about Gaster doesn't mean he's not going to be relevant, especially when he's got his grubby little hands all over the themes and ideas of Deltarune. No, the point of this video is to explain a way I think Gaster could be used and what themes he could explore, outside of the standard darkness ones that I mentioned in my second video. People have gone over in significant detail Gaster's potential role in the overall meta-narrative, to the point where I'm not particularly interested in honing in on that. For what we want to do, we need to understand not who Gaster is, but what he is. And for that reason, we're going to be looking at the core of this guy. Ultimately, Gaster is content cut from Undertale. Kind of. He is technically in the game, of course. You can find, presumably, him and his followers, though this wasn't in the game at launch. Everything related to Gaster is connected to these fun values, a random and obscure value in your save file that can trigger particular events. What is fun in this situation? Well, they're all funny random events, so I guess that tracks, even if some of them are a bit odd. Something about these fun events that's interesting is that almost all of them seem to be connected to Gaster in some way. The Wrong Number song asks for someone with a name starting with G. Both Sans and Alfie's call us, who are both very associated with him. We see the Gaster followers and Gorna Kid, who isn't a follower but provides an interesting perspective about being eliminated from existence. We see Clam Girl, who mentions a character called Susie. We see the sound test room with cut songs including Gaster's themes, and most importantly, the fake hallway and the mystery man himself. If it's not connected to Gaster directly, it's connected to Deltarune, and that'll do it for me. In the introduction, I mentioned the sixes. Part of the way this is relevant is from these fun values, where the fun event associated with the number 66 is the fake hallway and the appearance of Gaster. Already this is the strongest link we could possibly have with Gaster, and it comes at this 6/6 value. This wouldn't be as notable if it wasn't for another, more explicit point. In data mined encounter information for Gaster, it seems that all of his stats would have been 666, 666. Evidently this does invoke some form of religious demonic thinking, but even outside of that it makes Gaster a little more ominous than he would be otherwise. You get the distinct impression that whatever shattered him across time and space did more than just that. So considering Gaster as a character exists on the edge of Undertale's reality, what does that mean for his role in Deltarune? There's an entity that keeps showing up in Deltarune who I and the wider community have generally accepted is Gaster. They have an interest in the player and darkness, have a theme that uses Gaster's theme, talk a hell of a lot like entry number 17. I think anyone clicking on this video knows this, so I won't delay much more. Frankly, the reason we, or the soul, are here in the first place is because of the connection Gaster has forged between the two of us. Compared to his presence in Undertale, this is a lot more explicit, but who knows if this is the same Gaster in both worlds, or if this Gaster is just chilling out. Has Gaster attained some kind of higher level existing between our world and the ones of Undertale and Deltarune? It seems to be the case that these two worlds have some kind of equal existence, ignoring some small differences for some very large similarities, so Gaster would have had to somehow transcend just being a character in Undertale to do so. Perhaps Deltarune's Gaster fell into the Grand Fountain and it granted him awareness over the world, who knows. We've also got a lot of Eggman content in the more recent chapters, content that I absolutely adore and I'm not sure how to unpack, but I'm really unsure if this is Gaster. There's a compelling Easter egg link, as well as possibly being connected to the shelter using a generous interpretation of Lost where the forest would grow, but it seems that this is saying something else. At the very least, I'm not confident that it's Gaster, so I'll leave it to the wayside for now. To really see what I'm getting at with all of this though, we need to understand his connections to another Deltarune character, one that we are intimately familiar with. Noelle Holiday's funny reindeer who is at the center of everything and the key to understanding Gaster's potential thematic readings. Noelle took center stage in chapter 2 with being a new party member in the Cybers world, but we also gained a lot of insight into her character via the Spammed and sweepstakes, though Toby has cast aspersions on how canon this is. I imagine most people know about Noelle decently well, so I'm just going to point out some particular details that are relevant to what I'm talking about today. Noelle has a missing sister called December, or Des. It's a real mystery that likely has bigger implications for Noelle, Chris, and Hometown, and it's likely what got Noelle so invested in mysteries in the first place. From a young age she was interested in spooky myths and scary movies, but with the disappearance of Des she was more likely to try strange things, click on odd links, and overall investigate where other people wouldn't. It even seems like she got the attention of Spampton, or vice versa, though whether or not this was before his Gasterification, or if a concept of before and after even exists in this situation, is unclear. Additionally, Noelle is a bit of a mirror to Chris. They were childhood friends in fact, growing distant after Des's disappearance, but beginning to reconnect now. However, both of them live lives somewhat void of freedom and personal control. Chris lives in Azrael's shadow and under our thumb, while Noelle is haunted by Des, imposed upon him by a controlling mother, and has to worry about her ailing father. A cornerstone of Deltarune's messaging is the idea of freedom and choice, a topic I went over extensively in my halcyon days of Deltarune theorizing. It's not exactly subtle either. Some of the most well-known aspects of the game include your choices don't matter and there's something more important than reaching the end. This is manifested time and time again by the endings of each chapter being almost the same regardless of your actions within the Dark World. Even in the more unpredictable situations, you still always close the Dark Fountain, and Chris's actions remain largely the same in Hometown. There is something almost suffocating about this, the feeling that all of your actions don't actually matter to the overall construction of the game. However, as we all know, there is one way to break out of this narrative constriction. The Snow Grapefruit is a fascinating look into what can happen when you force someone, or something, to act not within their nature. Not only is Noelle changed, but so is the story, even if it ends in the same place. By constantly choosing actions and behaviours that you know set you up for the Snow Grapefruit, can you begin it? And these actions are far from pleasant. freezing everyone in the cyber's world, leading to the serious injury of Birdley and a grim, hollow game state, didn't exactly seem like a fun story avenue to go down. In this way, we reduce Noelle to nothing but a tool, something that we can use to break the game and find out information we're not meant to know. Similar, albeit ethically different, to how we use Chris as a tool to explore the world of Deltarune. This is also the route where Noelle is labelled, mostly by Spamton, as an angel, a term that comes up quite a bit within Deltarune. However, her actions as an angel are not exactly magnanimous. This is foreshadowing to the true nature of the angel and its funny heaven that we'll have to deal with in the future, and it's likely that the commentary on connection and flexibility will not be ending anytime soon. The connection between Noelle, us, and the angel go even further. For a long time now, it's been hypothesized that we, the player, are the angel. I wasn't sure about this, but with everything that's happened in these chapters, I feel pretty confident in that idea. From the very non-subtle imagery of the angel doll falling on our soul, to the way we force our will onto Noelle through the weird root through line, we are this presence of control and power within Noelle's life. We are inextricably linked to Noelle, both through Chris and the nature of the game itself. The angel, Noelle, and I wonder who could complete this trio. Who would have guessed? The angel is an interesting comparison with Mr. 666 over here, a connection I'm almost sure is intentional. If not that, then how about the countless other options? Let's talk about them. Firstly, the music. As famous gamer Andrew Cunningham noted, there seems to be samples of Gaster's theme within tracks related to Noelle, which is definitely not something that should go unnoticed. We all know how Toby loves to play with leitmotifs, and so including snippets of the man who speaks in hands inside music of this mostly new character should be ringing alarm bells for anyone looking for crumbs. I also wouldn't be the first to point out that Noelle's position as a hunter of video game Easter eggs in comparison to Gaster's role as, well, an Easter egg. Noelle has always been invested in discovering all there is to find in a video game, going off the beaten path just for a bit more information or to discover some kind of secret. This is exactly the type of thinking and an activity that led us to finding Gaster within the real world within the code of Undertale. Speaking of finding things within the code, we found something in Deltarune as well. The individual trapped in the code, the person who may be Des, was found in a very similar way to Gaster. There are a few leaps of logic that we have to make, that Des is indeed trapped in the code somehow and it's somehow related to Gaster, but considering that this person talks about things being dark and Gaster seems to have a degree of control over the program we use, i.e. Deltarune the game, I think there is enough somewhat solid evidence to draw a tentative line between them, reinforced by the similar findings and creepy underlying elements. However, with the advent of chapters 3 and 4, it seems that Des is playing an entirely different role, that being the night itself. It seems like this might cause a bit of a problem, but I don't think so. I've always believed that Des is both roles anyway, so allow me to explain. Clearly there's something deeply wrong with the night, and I believe it's entirely possible, if not probable, that something terrible happened to Des to have her, say, consumed by darkness, becoming darker than dark to become the night. Gaster moment. Additionally, Gaster himself, or again the person we are currently assuming is Gaster, talks to us during the night battle, meaning he has some kind of vested interest in this situation, whether we win or lose. So essentially, provided that Des is either the person trapped in the code and/or the night, she has links to Gaster. Pretty interesting, huh? It does go a bit deeper than that though. Noelle's fascination regarding the secrets of video games isn't just because she thinks it's interesting. No, there is a deeper creepiness that underlies them. Whether it's a strange egg that appears and seems to only exist to be disconcerting, the doors that she swears exist but can never find again, Noelle seems to be particularly excited about creepy secrets or ideas, bolstered by her horror-turned passion for other spooky aspects like cryptids and horror movies. We never get to see what she thinks of the sword route in chapter 3, but considering it essentially spells out how to do the Snowgrave route, I reckon it's got something to do with her anyway. This strengthens the link between her and Gaster even more thanks to the links of the 6th trend that ties it all together. Imagine if you told Noelle that in Dragon Blazes there was an ancient wizard who was deleted from the code but had 666 in every stat. She would be even more fascinated. Maybe that's a little bit of wishful thinking, but I believe it's undeniable that Gaster's position not only as an Easter egg, but an ominous Easter egg is what properly ties him to Noelle by association. Well, what about the Snowgrave route? Don't think I'm going to bring that up just to immediately forget about it like I'm writing Apollo Justice's character arc. Understanding Gaster and understanding the Snowgrave route seem to be somewhat disconnected, but they're intrinsically linked. By understanding this link, this connection, we can properly understand the point I'm trying to get at in this video. The only way you find Gaster in Undertale to begin with is by repeatedly trying an odd secret, and the other moments associated with him, such as entry number 17, the night battle, and the sound test room, are all either hidden or completely out of the way. Likewise, the Snowgrave route seems like a video game creepypasta come to life. You need to do very specific things to not only get on the Snowgrave route, but to finish it as well. Compared to the No Mercy route in Undertale, which was just kill everything you see, this is almost more akin to the true pacifist route in terms of jumping through hoops. I will say, although I'm dismissing Gaster being the devil in disguise, there is something to be said about how similar Gaster and Snowgrave are in the nature of their discovery and access. They're not just obtuse, they're both kind of modern day creepypastas, and so invoking the 666 in Gaster really cements that connection. The Sixes, the Forbidden Path, the Gaster and Noelle connections, what do they all mean? With the perspective that I've built up across this video, it's time for my big reveal. Gaster represents narrative sin. By doing things you're not meant to do, you are rebelling against the sacred path of the narrative and going against the word of the creator, or at least against the word of the prophecy. Gaster represents this best by being someone who you constantly have to break the game to be able to even learn about, let alone witness. That's what I think the emphasis on these sixes, especially 666, is meant to represent. There isn't much that's very devilish about Gaster, at least not obviously. That's because Gaster isn't the devil, he's the sin. He is the forbidden fruit, one that you have to break the game to be able to find. After all, the original sin was one of knowledge, and Gaster's whole deal is motivated by our insatiable need to learn more, to know more, to see more. The temptation that there is something more out there, something more to know. And who better for us to break the game with than Noelle, the one who shares this philosophy and has already demonstrated the capability to not only break the traditional rules of storytelling within Deltarune, but the very game itself, together with us. To be clear, I don't think that Gaster is deliberately orchestrating the weird routes in order to torture people and make you do sin. What I do think Gaster represents, though, is going off the beaten path. When I say sin, I really mean going against what the purported message of the game, the prophecy, if you will, rather than necessarily doing evil. However, as mentioned, there is still a sense of ominousness, of something strange. Gaster represents looking for things where you're not meant to, or where you might not expect to find anything. Perhaps that's the only way to find him, as he is shattered across time and space, after all. Gaster wants to see something new, something different, something interesting. He clearly exists on a different level, or in a different way, to mostly everyone else in Deltarune. Part of the reason why Noelle is specifically so important is because she is, in a way, like us. She would investigate secrets, both in the video game she loved and the world she lived in, and thus is a perfect person to lead us not only to Gaster, but whatever is true about Deltarune. In Snowgrave, we use Noelle as a tool, and it's not unforeseen that we may need her again to really be able to commit to this narrative sin, breaking the story to ultimately forge our own ending by highlighting the connections we have with others. I'm going to bring up one piece of information I haven't mentioned already as the final piece to this puzzle. We know about the unused pure crystal, likely a purified or combined shadow crystal that we could obtain in the future from Shawn. What's particularly interesting is that the only use for the pure crystals we know at the moment is actually in the game, to combine them with the Snowgrave exclusive Thorn Ring to form the Twisted Sword. This is a really interesting dichotomy, but what does that have to do with narrative sin? Well, think about it. The shadow crystal is an item that is deliberately out of the way. Without knowing what you have to look for, you need a lot of luck, backtracking, and keen perception to figure out what you need to do, not to mention a pretty difficult boss fight at the end of it all. We already have a link between them and Gaster thanks to his more than likely influence on the secret bosses themselves, and I don't think I need to explain why the item made out of pure darkness might be connected to Mr. Darker yet darker. The pure crystal in turn has been removed from the game. Kind of. This sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? It is somewhat content, but its presence still lingers within it in the form of the aforementioned crafting recipe. To obtain this, you need to go further than just doing some complex steps and boss battles. You need to break the game itself. Of course, it's implied by Shawm in Chapter 4 that he would be able to make it, but Toby has still made the explicit point of including it before we can access it. So why show us now? Why point out not only its existence, but its most pertinent use of a crafting recipe if you're not even going to include it yet? It's to get us thinking about what it means to combine this item in lieu of learning about the Snowgrave route. To bring it all together, the Thorn Ring is what makes Snowgrave possible, and although you can keep it in an aborted Snowgrave route, I'm not sure if that's fully the intention considering what the Thorn Ring is capable of. Interestingly, as of Chapter 4, we do not have the Thorn Ring. It's back in Noelle's possession, so perhaps the only way to retain it is to get close to the edge of sin, but not quite tip over the edge. By combining the pure crystal, something you cannot obtain in the Snowgrave route, with the Snowgrave exclusive Thorn Ring, we have an impossible item. An item only able to be obtained by messing with data, by manipulating save files, and by perhaps even crossing into alternate timelines. The Twisted Sword. Yes, the Twisted Sword is a physical manifestation of the narrative sin we can commit. Not only is it made up of the efforts of Gaster, Noelle, and our twisted power over this world, but it is a combination of both the literal sin of breaking Noelle and the metaphorical sin of breaking the game. We can only get this item by being an active participant in this narrative temptation, and thus it's likely to bring us back to the progenitor of all of this, Gaster himself. Whatever this weapon is, it will no doubt further the goal of committing narrative sin by going against what the story seems to want us to do. How this may happen is a question for another day, but the dichotomy between the pure crystal and the Thorn Ring to synthesize something new should not be ignored, and ignore it we shan't. In the same vein, what do we think could be a metaphorical synthesis of these parts? These different sins and the way they weigh on us and everyone around us, the actions and consequences of breaking the game. See, there's this idea that I've been kind of skirting around for a while. In Deltarune, the whole point of the Fun Gang being in the Dark Worlds is to banish the Angel's Heaven. Considering what we know from Father Alvin and the overall construction of Hometown, the Angel is even notable in the Light World, and seems to be their central religious figure due to their understanding of the prophecy. This means it's probably more complex than it seems if we're here to stop its heaven from existing. We get to see a lot more about the prophecy that details all of this in Chapter 4, thanks to the Church Dark Worlds, and it seems that the angel will receive what it desires, whatever that means. Of course, as mentioned even as far back as my original video, I don't think Toby is going to make the angel be stereotypically traditional. If we're considering Gaster as an avenue for narrative sin, with his connections to the devil and Noelle, this shines a potential light on his motivations, or at least what might happen in the future. It seems that Gaster, whilst not being the creator of Deltarune, the world itself, has a vested interest in making something interesting happen, something new happen. It doesn't seem like he is explicitly for or against the prophecy, but he is certainly aware of it and does want to see us, the player, continue on. He is undeniably connected to us, and we to him. This is not to say that we are inherently the angel. This intertwining of knowledge, sin, and power works regardless of the truth. We are a being of pure light, shining away the darkness. Gaster is the scientist, obsessed with pure darkness. We are a perverted angel, calling all the way back to Undertale, a being not of purity and kindness and love, but one of absolute power. If narrative sin, temptation, whatever, means going off the beaten path, sticking our heads where they're not meant to be, and breaking the game over our need to get what we want, it's likely that not only will that be necessary to finding a proper ending to Deltarune involving truly dealing with the angel, that being us and our relationship to both Gaster and Chris, but it also means that Gaster himself is likely involved, if not integral, to this outcome. Perhaps our greatest desire is ultimately to finish the game, answers and all. For our actions to matter outside of being just a puppet to complete a simple objective, something that is told in the prophecy end and multiple characters we fight against, we will need to take a microscope to the narrative of Deltarune and pick exactly where we can push its limits. After all, the devil truly is in the details. Hell of a video, huh? If it made sense. It was honestly really difficult for me to actually formulate the progression for, more so for any other video. Even drew a mind map, that's how bad it got. As always, leaving a like and such or comment is always lovely, and if you enjoy my content and would like to see more, feel free to subscribe. This video was spurred on by conversations with friends and colleagues within the Deltarune community, so thank you to those people. You know who you are. Additionally, thank you as always to my wonderful patrons Michael Bates, Tybee Fitzhugh, Meggie, Zalgo, Visible, and Nigel Robinson for your continued support. Until next time, I've been Viva Veritas, and I'll see you again soon.